I'm back. Welcome all. So we're streaming live. Woo! We're streaming live. Thank you. Right, so keep the swearing down, you lot. All right, let's keep it family friendly. So what we've got now is we've got the round table, or it's more of a semicircle really, but we're going to call it a round table. Now, in no particular order, I'm gonna call these wonderful people up. They're not believers, so they don't mind who's going first, who's going last. They're all equal, all right? My rules. So, first of all, can we have a big round of applause? This young lady is a US paranormal Bigfoot researcher. Gwendolyn Purcell, come up! I feel like a game show. Here she comes, big round of applause. Wherever takes your fancy. She wants to sit in the middle. I did say there was no divas. I'm not sure now. Right, next, a UK Bigfoot researcher. We may have heard of him tonight, I don't know. It's Daniel. Come on, Daniel. Big round of applause. Have a few. Yeah, they are divas, isn't they? Next, we have US Bigfoot researcher Brian Kingsharp. Up he comes. Here he is. I love him. That's the energy we want. See that little jog in there? There we go. Have a few. Okay, worldwide researcher. This one here. Richard Freeman. Where is he? There he goes. Oh, look, he's got the longer walk up. Here he comes. Thank you. Where do you want to go? Lovely. Here he is, Bigfoot himself, UK paranormal Bigfoot researcher. It's Big Chris, give a round of applause. Give us a smile, Chris, it's not that hard. Come on, you're doing really well. And last but not least, we've had him up chatting already, the one and only, the youngster, it's Harlem Jones. Come on, Harlem. Well, I see there's no extra seat for me, so I suppose I better leave the stage now, haven't I? But we've got some lights here. Daniel, do you want to grab one there? There's one behind you there. Gwendolyn, do you want to grab that? There we go. Get your exercise in as well. Keep turn that on. I've got a spare one in. So I'm told these lovely individuals, they have certain questions that they're going to ask the team themselves. So we get an insight about the questions that they want to ask each other. And then we see how we're doing with time. And then if there's a bit of time, I might throw some curveball ones in. Otherwise, I shall leave it to you. So I'll hand this one over. Hello, is this thing on?
I guess that means I'll start the questioning, right? Okay. This is something that came up recently. I did a conference in Florida, and it was very specific to that area. You know, the skunk ape is in Florida. They tend to be smaller, they tend to have different reports of different things. So specifically for the UK researchers, I want to start, Chris, Richard, Harley, one of you guys can answer this. Is there something specific to the UK? Because this comes up on the show a lot. How can there be Bigfoot in the UK, right? I know you guys get that question. Is there area here for people that aren't familiar with Bigfoot and research? Are there areas here that are very specific to like the Pacific Northwest or comparable to the Pacific Northwest, or even where I live in the southern United States here, where Bigfoot could live?
Well, if we're talking landmass, I'd definitely say the Highlands in Scotland. A lot of that is uninhabited Highlands in Scotland. It's just pure mountains, woodland, lochs, lakes. But if you're talking about the whole of the UK, I'd have to say most forests. I mean, what people don't understand is, yeah, the island might be small, you might have explored most of it, but you've still got parts, the deepest, darkest parts of the woods where people don't go, where anything could be hiding. I mean, a lot of these locations have got disused slate mines, which we don't go in anymore, which would be perfect for any kind of creature that's a big or a dogman or whatever to hide in, and then come out at night, resurface and get food or whatever.
So, it's very difficult because I know when I started researching Bigfoot, I didn't believe that it would be. It's only since I've started working with imaging and I've started working with people that have actually had encounters where I went, it could be possible. I don't think it's the 8-foot creature that the Pacific Northwest has, because otherwise I reckon it might be spotted more frequently. But yeah, so I don't know on that. I think I would have to go 50-50. It could be a smaller version or a similar version, but few of them. But we still need to keep that population going. So there's a lot of different theories that could be true or could not be true.
Absolutely not. Britain is the size of the state of Oregon. It is one of the most overpopulated islands in Europe, countries in Europe rather. There are something like 70 million people living here. The forests that we do have are comparatively tiny. They are nothing like the mountain forests of Tibet or Bhutan. They're nothing like the Pacific Northwest. A lot of them are pine forests, pine plantations. Most of our natural forests have been destroyed. The biggest forest in Britain is the Khyder Forest in Scotland. And none of these areas are big enough to support a population of relic hominins. You can't just have one animal running around. You have to have a base population where there is enough genetic difference that you don't get inbreeding. You need a base population with primates of at least something like 500. 500 large, upright primates running around in Britain will be noticed more often. And there's not enough here to support the calorific needs of them either. I used to be a zookeeper. I've worked with great apes. I know how big they are, how much noise they make. There's nowhere in Britain you can hide these things. I've searched for unknown primates across the world. I've searched for the Yeti in northern India, the Russian almasti, the orang pendek in the jungles of Sumatra, and the ghoul in Tajikistan. But these are wild countries with thousands of square miles of mountains and forests. And on a little island like Britain, there's just not enough room for a relic hominin species to exist. We would have known about it and probably hunted it into extinction centuries ago. Now, people say about things like the woodwoes from medieval times. Well, if you actually study the woodwoes and what it's supposed to be, it isn't supposed to be a different species. It's supposed to have been, because you've got to remember the medieval mindset is all religious. They're supposed to have been modern humans, human beings that have been excluded from the love of God. So they're living like wild animals and they become hairy. So they're not a relic hominin. So I think what's been seen in the UK, and my friend John Downs will probably tell you later, he's seen something very strange and kind of jokes. But I think what's been seen in the UK is generally, for want of a better word, something paranormal rather than an animal, in the same way that an orangutan or a gorilla is an animal.
So we got two sides to the same coin there. Whether it exists in the UK or not, all I'm going to say is we're going to try and find out.
Well, obviously Richard Freeman is the recent one in the UK. I'd like to know what your opinion is of the theories that it could be possibly paranormal, interdimensional, some kind of extraterrestrial alien of some sort. I'd like to hear all your opinions on that.
I personally am in the flesh and blood camp. I think these things, if they do exist, are flesh and blood. I think people have experiences that are extremely paranormal. And I think that's what it could be. I've interviewed thousands of people at this point. My show, Sasquatch Odyssey, is all about encounter stories with people who have had encounters with what they believe to be Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Stone Ape. And I've talked to people over here in the United Kingdom who have had experiences with what they believe to be a Bigfoot-like creature. I certainly am open to the possibility of there being something paranormal to these things because people do say they disappear, for example. I think that's, to me, again, I'm more evidence-based. I think that if they are disappearing, it's more of a disappearing into their environment. I think these things would have to be masters of their environment and blend in extremely well wherever they happen to be. So I think there are probably more mundane answers to some of the paranormal things that people experience. I have experienced paranormal things, not in relation to Bigfoot or Sasquatch, but independent of that. So I don't necessarily buy the alien theory that the UFOs are dropping them off to go to the bathroom or whatever it is that they do here. Again, I'm open to that. If somebody has evidence that points me in that direction, I'm going to follow the evidence wherever it goes. So very much like Chris said, we may not know, but we're looking for the answers, right? That's what it's all about for me. I'm looking for those answers for myself. I think most people who get into this are into it for the answers for us. I've had experiences I can't explain. I haven't seen one of these creatures yet. That's the ultimate payoff for me, is to say, yes, I've seen this creature. So I'm open to the paranormal thing. I just don't think personally that if Bigfoot exists, whether it be in the United States or the United Kingdom or wherever people experience them, that they are something paranormal. I think it's a flesh and blood creature that may have abilities we don't understand. Things like cuttlefish, things like squid, they do weird things, right? They change color, they change shape. Could these things have some of those abilities? Sure. We just don't know.
So I think I would agree with a lot of that and say I've only been into Bigfoot for 3-4 years now, but I am in the flesh and blood side, but I'm open to the possibility of having that paranormal side. Now, some of the research that I've been looking into is people seem to think that Bigfoot and humans are kind of share skills. Now, there's another creature alive today that actually copy what humans do. Orangutans actually use tools to eat. They actually copy what we do. Now, that's when you go, okay, is it out of the realm that another creature could do the same thing? So that's when you go, okay, these creatures may be smart, but not paranormal. Now, whether this creature would have a mind that is more evolved than we are, that's another theory that it could be, where, let's say, Bigfoot has learned to bury their dead. Well, maybe they've copied what we've been doing. I don't know, but I think some of the things that people say Bigfoot is paranormal, well, it can be explained by real live animals that are alive today. So I'm in the middle, but if someone shows me Bigfoot jumping into a portal, I will believe it immediately.
And going off of what Brian and Daniel both said, I have seen Bigfoot twice on 2 separate occasions, and I would love to say that it's a flesh and blood creature because that's just what I would love it to be. But I have had a lot of experiences that I personally could not explain, and I've had witnesses come to me and have similar experiences. So I'm not gonna jump on whatever playing field, people are in, like if it's an alien or if it's paranormal or if it travels through dimensions and portals, I don't know. When I see Bigfoot come out of a portal or be beamed down out of a spaceship, I will jump on board. Until then, I'm just trying to keep an open mind and just let the evidence tell me what's actually happening. I agree with you guys. I think they have capabilities that we just don't understand, that we can't wrap our heads around. So.
When you're painting with very broad strokes, what you would call monsters fall into two main categories. And there are category number one is the unknown animal. And this can be a creature that's completely unknown to science, like the Mongolian deathworm, or the Yeti, or sea serpents. And it can also be animals that we think are extinct, but are still around, like, for instance, the Tasmanian wolf, or the great ivory-billed woodpecker, or the pink-headed duck. Animals that are classed as extinct, but people still see them on a regular basis. Then we have this other set that seem to make no sense as biological animals. And in this you can include things like the Mothman, Owlman, what are broadly called dogmen now, which have very little relationship to the werewolves of actual medieval legend, which were people that were turned entirely into a wolf, indistinguishable from any other wolf, not this man-wolf hybrid that people say they see running around today. Things like dragons, which you might associate simply with medieval folklore, but I'm collecting reports, and there are a surprising number of reports from around the world of modern-day dragon sightings, everywhere from the United States to Iceland, to the UK, to South Africa. And obviously, you can't have an animal the size of a plane flying around without us knowing about it. We would know about it. It would have been classified years ago. So these creatures are, for want of a better word, paranormal. And it's a very awkward term, I don't like it. And my latest book, which is called The Highest Strangeness, it should have been here today, but there was a cock-up at the printers. But you can buy it online. This takes a deep dive into what these things are, where they come from. And there's something that I call the global monster template, and you'll see the same monsters again and again and again in every single culture. And that includes dragons, demonic black dogs, strange cats, little people, fairies, goblins and things, hairy giants, whether you call them trolls or ogres or whatever, and monstrous birds. And it's all traceable back to our Australopithecine ancestors on the plains of East Africa a couple of million years ago, when they'd come down out of the trees to exploit new food sources on the spreading savannas. They would have been preyed on by crocodiles and pythons, large birds like the crown eagle, African wild dogs, leopards and lions, and they would be in competition with other primates, some bigger, some smaller. So it's almost as if the monsters we get from our different cultures are distorted echoes or memories of the creatures that would have been either preying on or in conflict with our own ancestors 2 million years ago. And that's what my new book's all about.
Difficult to follow that. So, flesh and blood or paranormal, that's where we were. Flesh and blood, as we always say, is world's greatest hide and seek champion. But if it's paranormal, it's the worst, because there's 30,000 sightings since this century alone. So, yeah, we've still got to find out, right?
It's not one thing or the other. It's not one thing or the other, it can be both. People see these huge demonic black dogs, black shuck, the barges. There's a different one in every county in Britain, and they have different names, and they go back centuries. People see these huge demonic black dogs, but there are real black dogs as well. There are real flesh and blood black dogs. So it's as if whatever this phenomenon is, it mimics flesh and blood animals.
Let's see here. I in the United States am really big on getting our youth involved, out from behind their cell phones and their computers and their game systems, and just get them out into nature, whether they see a Bigfoot or they see a deer. It would be important. Do you feel that that's important? I mean, I think they're the future of our research. And if we don't get these kids involved in what's happening out there in nature, this whole thing may come to a crashing end. So do you guys feel the same way, that we need to get kids more involved in what's happening in the woods, whether it's Bigfoot related or just nature related?
Absolutely, yeah. I grew up in the 70s, and I was out every day. I would go out every single day into the countryside and into the woods with my friends and, look for animals. And kids just don't seem to do that anymore. They're stuck on their phones or in front of some mind-rotting video game. I'm a Luddite anyway, I'm a complete technophobe. So I despair sometimes. So anything that gets kids interested in nature is great, and it can only be a healthy, good thing. And as we get older, and there'll come a time when we can't do field work anymore, we need someone to replace us.
Yeah, I've taken my kids out looking for the beast of Exmoor a few times, and you see deer, rabbits, hedgehogs, sometimes a badger, and it's exciting. Genuinely chuffed to bits you've seen it. Not on the side of the road, but running around still alive in the field is, yeah, definitely.
So I can definitely relate to that question, and the reason why is because the whole reason of doing what I'm doing is to get children out into the woods, and the whole reason of the documentary, the whole reason of these conferences, all of it, is to get children involved. And I can definitely say that that's the reason why we want to get people out. We want to get the next generation out there, and to get them researching and interested and away from TVs, away from phones, and away from technology and out in nature.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the things that excited me so much when I met Daniel, was to see somebody your age getting out into the woods, interested in the subject. I have people who listen to my show in 100 plus countries, and I go to these conferences and do talks, and my favorite thing in the world is to have people come up to the table and say, I listen with my son, or I listen with my daughter. We do this activity before we go out into the woods looking for Bigfoot, and we'll get psyched up because we're listening to your show, we hear these encounter stories, and then we go out and we camp for a couple of days. We sit around the campfire, we downloaded your show, and we listen to it as we're doing our research. And that's one of my favorite things, is to get people your age in Harlem out in the woods looking for these things, because the old guard is going to pass this on eventually, and there has to be that interest there. So I'm so glad to see that is happening, because unless, we say it all the time, Gwen and I, we were talking at dinner and on some of the car rides, people, you don't see things unless you're looking for them, right? I've had a couple of UFO experiences in the past, and the only reason that I saw what I saw was because I was looking up at the sky. How many people get a chance or actually do that? Very few people are in the woods looking for Bigfoot. That's one of the things that comes up over and over in the United States is, well, as many people as there are in the woods, there's all these national forests, there's thousands of people who visit them every year. Most people are on their phone. They're taking pictures of trees or whatever, but they're not really looking. They're not really paying attention. So the more that the younger generation, and even people our age and other ages, I don't care how old you are, you can do Bigfoot research. If you're out looking for these things, you're going to see more than you would if you're just not paying attention. So it's great to see. I'm so glad and so thankful that you guys are picking up the torch and going to pass it on because, let's face it, I mean, we're going to hear from Dr. Jeff Meldrum later today. Jeff's not getting any younger, right? And he's been carrying this mantle for so long, and especially for the scientific community. So there are young scientists in this room right now. People are going to grow up, they're going to get into science. Maybe you're going to become a primatologist or a biologist or something. Hopefully what we're doing here today may inspire you to take a look at, scientifically take a look at this subject, because very few people are doing it, and those people who have done it. The late Dr. John Vinternagle was another. Gone. He'll never be back, right? So people have to pick up that mantle and take it on. Maybe you two, maybe the next generation that do that. So I think it's very important anytime we have the opportunity to inspire younger people to get into the subject and take a serious look at it. I think we're moving in the right direction.
I believe the simple answer to the question is, if we don't teach our future generations to look for Bigfoot, to get out there in nature, then we're simply never going to find it. We're never going to find any of these creatures if we're not teaching the future generations to look for them. Because what's the likeliness that any of us are going to find Bigfoot? 0 to none. We need future generations to have this interest, to look at these creatures. Otherwise, nothing's going to come from it.
Oh, God. So people think of kind of different colours of Bigfoot. So sometimes we find Bigfoot with white hair, darker hair. Rubbish with colours, but so what do people think? Do you think there are different colours of Bigfoot, or do you think there's one type, or what do you think?
I think there's many different kinds of Bigfoot, just like there's many different kinds of people. I think Brian can attest to this too. In the United States, Bigfoot that are in the northern part of the United States tend to be bigger. They're a little beefier because they got to maintain themselves through the wintertime. Whereas like the skunk ape in Florida is usually smaller, maybe a little, a little skinny, because it doesn't have to maintain itself during the winter. And I've had different reports. The ones that I saw were black. I've had reports of like a cinnamon color. Of course, I have not gotten any personal reports of there being a white one, but I have heard stories of other countries that maybe they're white. So I think it's possible. I think they're just as different as we are as people.
Known primates exhibit quite a range of colours and pelage. For example, orangutans, we think of orangutans as being ginger, but you can get black ones and brown ones. Apparently the North American Sasquatch, it can be brown, it can be black, it can be white. But the one that isn't white is the Yeti. Everybody thinks the Yeti is white. It's not. There has never been a sighting of a white Yeti. They are black, brown, gingerish, never white. The idea of a white Yeti comes from a mistranslation of the Sino-Tibetan term Nito Kanmei, which means abominable man of the rocks. It was mistranslated as abominable man of the snows. And this is where we get this false idea of white Yetis from. And I can see a poster up at the back there that has a white Yeti on it, which is just spreading misinformation. Because the Yeti, as far as we know, we've never had a sighting of a white one. When I was talking to the people who'd seen the Yeti in the Garo Hills of northern India, where they call it Mande Barum, the forest man, they all said it was black. They said it looked like a gorilla standing on its hind legs and about 3 meters, 10 feet tall. But they come in a lot of different colours. Orang pendek, the creature I've looked for now 6 times on the island of Sumatra. There have been reports of those black, grey, honey-coloured, reddish. So they come in a wide variety of colours, but black and grey seem to be the commonest for the orang pendek.
Yeah, I'm with Gwen. I think there's a million different hair colors, and we just person witnesses something and applies the color that they best associate with what they've seen.
Okay, well, I'd like to ask everybody here and you don't have to confine yourself to one, but what cryptids do you think are the most likely to exist or the most likely to be proven to exist as real flesh and blood animals opposed to something paranormal?
Giant great white shark. Absolutely. Seen one.
Oh boy, I'd have to say it would be either Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster. I know we, in the United States, we have Champ, and we have, what's the other one? Oh, is that what it is? Ogopogo? But I mean, I think there's too many witness accounts to discount them not being real.
Again, I'm with you, and say that one of the odd ones that I would like to address is we know big cats are real. We know that they are out there. We know that they are in the world. And we are pretty sure that they're here in the UK, but they are not proven here in the UK. And I'll pass that to Harlem in a minute, because he's doing some good work. Am I right? Yeah. So I would say, yeah, Bigfoot, Loch Ness, and I would say big cats would be on the list as well.
I would definitely agree. I think Bigfoot for me is at the top of the list because it makes the most sense as far as being a physical creature, actually with the possibility somewhere in our lineage, maybe a Gigantopithecus, something along those lines. Australopithecines, other characters could fit the bill, but I think Gigantopithecus for me would some sort of an offshoot of that. But I think big cats. I think when we say cryptids, a lot of people automatically think fantasy. Not the case, right? It's just an unproven animal, right? Thylacines for a long time were thought to be gone, and they became cryptids, but yet people saw them for decades. And we know that they existed way beyond when they were thought to be gone, right? So I think that's a good example, but I certainly think Bigfoot, big cats, and some of the lake monsters or even sea monsters that people consider to be cryptids, I think they're probably unknown animals that just haven't been proven yet. So I think those things are probably the top three for me.
100% big cats. Early this year in January, I saw what I believe to be a black leopard while I was in Boston Lake District. Cumbria is my main area of research when it does come to big cats, though I have found proof elsewhere in the UK, such as the cliff tops of Speeton, where I found human footsteps or tracks. Now, one area close to the town of Kendal in the lakes, myself and a few other investigators were studying a group of sheep kills. You could tell it was a big cat because the necks, you could see bite marks on necks and teeth. The mouth had been stripped off. Parts of the legs, you could tell where a feline had been licking to get to the blood. But definitely big cats. I mean, the amount of people that have seen big cats, it's insane. I mean, there's a big cat sighting in pretty much every county, every small area. Look at the other way, they're feasting on sheep, they're feasting on deer. People found deer up in trees, which most likely is due to these large predatory felines.
So I want everybody to imagine that you go out. I'm going to pick Bigfoot because it's my favourite. You're in the forest, you fall asleep, and wake up and you have your phone and you get some really clear footage of a Bigfoot tearing a deer's leg off and eating on it. And it's just not a man in a suit, it's a Bigfoot tearing tearing a leg off and chewing down on it. Now you've got superb evidence. You know where it is and where it's at, and you know that's going to attract a lot of attention from the right people and the wrong people. Are you going to tell anyone and destroy that creature's life and habitat for your own fame and glory? Or are you going to keep it to yourself and just tell your close friends?
That's a really good question. One of the animals that I've been most involved with is the Tasmanian wolf, or thylacine, in Tasmania, which was a flesh-eating marsupial that looked rather like a dog or a wolf, but had stripes along the back, and it was supposed to have been hunted into extinction in the 1930s. The last one died in the Maris Zoo in Tasmania in 1937. It's been called the healthiest extinct animal you'll ever meet, because since then there's been 4,000 sightings, including by a park ranger and a zoologist. And I think if I filmed this creature in its habitat, I would release the film, but I wouldn't say where it had been filmed. I would only give that information to other scientists and conservationists and zoologists. And the same would probably go for any other cryptid. The same would go for a Sasquatch or an orang-pendek or anything like that. I'd probably release it, but not tell people where it was.
I think your question was, what would we do if we get it? Honestly, for myself, I'm not doing this research to prove to anyone else other than me that I'm not crazy. I saw what I saw, and if I came face to face with it, after I have a heart attack, I would probably just let it go.
Well, and I think I've been in this situation before, I'll say, where I haven't had an actual Bigfoot encounter, but when I found my eDNA, myself and Jill Roberts / Nam, we decided to keep that location quiet because we didn't want everyone running up there until we properly went through, because if there was something else or something that would actually prove something. Now, I'm not saying that this DNA is this, or I'm not saying, but if it was, let's say there was bones from something there, we would want to keep that location quiet, and I still do to this day.
Really good question, Chris. If I got a clear photo of any cryptid, whether that was Bigfoot, a lake monster, I don't think I'd release it online. I think I'd want to keep it to myself. I'd share it to a few close friends, close researchers I can trust. Especially you, Chris, don't worry. Just so I know this cryptid here, I know where this cryptid is. So myself and these trustworthy investigators can go up there and study it more. So we know it's there. We've got this clear photo of it. But I think that'd be the best thing you could do until you get more evidence. Then maybe possibly publish it. Like, keep it to yourself. I think it's the best option. You want to get this creature killed, make it up.
I think the short answer for me is absolutely not. Even if it was HD quality, high definition, close-up video of one of these things, the Patterson-Gimlin film, right? We've been debating the Patterson-Gimlin film since 1967. It's still debated to this very day. Done entire episodes of the show that lasted an hour plus on nothing but the Patterson-Gimlin film. Is it real? Is it a man in a suit? The Freeman footage from 1992. We're still talking about the Blues Mountains footage. I personally believe that is real, but you could ask and poll 100 people, you're going to get 100 different responses, right? So it's not going to solve anything. film, video, in my opinion, is not going to solve the question for anybody. It's just going to be more questions than answers. So no, I definitely, for the very reasons you were talking about, Chris, and some of your panelists have said, but just for me, it would just be more questions than answers. I would know it was real at that point, but I don't believe that anybody else is going to see that. There's so much footage out there now that is highly debatable. And with AI and some of the things that come along, I mean, even Photoshop, people do amazing things with video in Photoshop. So I don't think it's going to solve anything. It would for me, obviously. I could say, okay, I got the video, I know it's real. It's not going to do anything for anybody else. But this brings up a question that I want to pose to the panel. It's one of the things that I have been talking a lot about recently. There's so many people and research groups. Gwen is part of a research group back home. I have a group of people that I trust. I don't necessarily have a research group, but there are a lot of people, like the North American Wooded Conservancy and Area X comes to mind back home. They're trying to collect a specimen for science. That's one of their things. But they're also trying to get video. They're trying to get photographs. And they're documenting tons of encounters with these things, rock throwing, vocalizations, you name it. But there's so many different groups. We're all individuals. We do things differently. Gwen, she has different areas she goes to. Harlan, you obviously have your areas. Daniel has his areas. Chris. So we're all operating independently. But here's the question I pose to you guys, and this is something that I've been thinking a lot about recently. And it applies everywhere. Whether it happens in the UK and it's a different cryptid, maybe it is a black panther here, maybe it is Bigfoot back home. Is there a way for us to come together as researchers and have sort of a standard operating procedure, if you will? I was a police officer for 16 years back home. We had standard operating procedures for how to start your car in the morning. Because if you step outside those SOPs, there's ways to correct that and bring it back in. It gives you the opportunity to have a guideline for what you do. Everybody can research the way that they want, but this is the thing that I've posed to several researchers back home recently. Can we come together as researchers, and even how do you start that conversation with coming up with a standard operating procedure if we do find a specimen? Harlan, you may be out hiking next week and you find a body that just passed away naturally. You don't necessarily have to go out and shoot one of these things, but let's talk specifically about Bigfoot. What do we do? What's the standard operating procedure? Who do you call, and how do we start that conversation as researchers if you find a specimen to say, do we call the news? Do you call the police? Do you call the government? Who do you call? What do you do? What's your first call, and what have you had the conversation with yourself about that? And if not, how do we start that conversation as researchers?
Well, I go hiking all the time. I do wild camping up in the lakes and mountainous areas. If I was to go up and find a dead carcass body of a Bigfoot, I think personally what I do, because obviously you can't bring it over here, you're not be able to lift up a Bigfoot body while you're in the mountains and check it down with you. I personally, for protection reasons, always carry around a multi-use knife. So I think personally what I do is take a sample from the specimen, whether that be a finger, a hand, something that I can fit in a bag, take back with me, just so I've got a piece of that elusive creature which no one believes in, just so I've got that proof of evidence that yes, it does exist, but I think you'd have to call someone, because great, you found this, you need other people to see it, you've seen it, sure that's good, but who's going to believe you? You need to bring other people in there, other sources, so they can share it as well.
I really didn't understand that question. I really didn't. So, could you repeat it?
There's a lot of pieces to the question. I guess the simple question is, have you considered what your standard procedure would be if you were to come across a carcass? And if not, how do we start that conversation with other researchers? Because everybody's basically doing their own thing. And I feel we need to have some sort of a understanding commonly amongst researchers that this is the way we handle it. Obviously, individuals are going to do it differently. As Harlan said, you got to take a sample or whatever. How would you handle that? And if you haven't thought about it, how do you think we start that conversation amongst the researchers?
Right. So I think so. I would start with the people who know about carcasses and say I would go to people that you trust and like Dr. Jeff Meldrum or and those are the types of people that I would go to. I wouldn't go to friends. I wouldn't go and just tell the whole world. I would also keep it very, very low and not announce it on social media and not kind of go, oh look, I found this in the woods the other day, and because you'll have hundreds and hundreds of people up there, or you'll have people call that fake, or so keep it very, very enclosed, like let's say like an NDA. You keep it very, very closed in what you say, just to then you go contaminate anything or.
So I really like the question because I think it's important. I have a friend of mine we're very close, and he is a police detective. So when I find something or something happens, the first thing I do is call him and go, you need to teach me how to figure this out. Like how to figure out how tall something is in a photograph, or, so he has spent a lot of time teaching me and about collecting evidence and making sure that you do it without contaminating it. So I pay a lot of attention. I think the first person I would call would be Matt. I'd be like, you're the police officer, come help me secure this thing. I don't know. I think we could create that and have that conversation. The problem I see with that is there's so many people that are diehard in their camp and diehard with the way that they do things that I don't know that we could get a lot of people to sit down at the table and discuss, a standard way of doing something, because everybody's got their own agenda. So if we had open-minded people that we could get together and say, okay, this is how we're going to collect the evidence. We're going to wear gloves. We're going to use tweezers. We're going to use paper bags. We're going to, do all the things. I think it would work. But I don't know. It's getting those people to the table that I think is going to be the most of the problem.
There are some variables in this. It would depend on whereabouts you found it. If you found your specimen in a foreign country, you would almost certainly not be allowed to take it out of that country. So another thing is, do you have the equipment to move it? Now, if you do, I would be taking the specimen to either a museum or a parks department. But I would make damn sure, before I handed it over, I'd taken samples from the corpse myself and kept them back, just in case anything shady was going on. If you couldn't move the whole thing, you take the head, because the important thing, particularly with mammals, is dental formula. The dental formula is the amount and types of teeth that different mammals have. Each different mammal has a different dental formula, and it's worked out by each quadrant, each quarter of the jaw. So the quarter of the upper, other quarter of the upper, quarter of the lower, other quarter of the lower, and the amount of molars, premolars, canines, and sizes. It's all different. So if you've got the skull, that's the important thing. But ideally, if you could move the whole thing, take it to a museum, take it to a parks department, but keep stuff for yourself in case it goes missing. Because in the past, there have been cryptid bodies allegedly found, and they've mysteriously gone missing.
Yeah, I would certainly, like Richard says, keep a sample for myself, but I think you get to the point where you are an investigator out in the field, and once if you find something, it's the next level, which is beyond my capabilities. So to have a recognised or institution in place that you could approach with, that would be the way ahead, yeah. Like Gwen says, getting everybody on the same page. Tough.
All right, we've got 10 minutes. We'd like to make this interactive. Does anybody in the audience, I think we've got time for one question that we can go through. Anything you're dying to answer that you want to ask the panel? Any of us? Individuals?
Come on.
Speak now or forever.
Come on.
But you can't let them do all the talking. Come on. Anyone got? There we go. On the subject of paranormal, what's your thoughts on it? Because realistically, a Bigfoot could be a relic hominid or a giant ape, but then you move into the paranormal, the UFO, they come from another dimension. What explains that? Because given there aren't any other animals that physically do this, you don't see a bear travelling through a portal, but you hear stories of people encountering Bigfoots, like arriving out of the portal. For instance, several years ago, Davies had that Bigfoot encounter with a portal when he was out with Matthew Johnson. What explains this? Is it like John Keel's mythical, beyond our kind of realm of possibility? Or so, yeah, give me a lowdown on high strangeness, please.
I've been nominated to start, so I guess it goes back to what I said earlier. I think I agree with you that I'm not sure any other animals do this, so it's hard to explain, right? And we have to be honest. I say this on my show often. We have to be intellectually honest when you're dealing with a subject like this. There are several different types of people and different types of encounters. Sometimes the encounters literally only happen in people's minds, and I think we have to be open to having that conversation. That some things could be going on and happening that they're interpreting as one thing that could be something else. I've talked to Adam a little bit about his encounter with Dr. Johnson in that area in the portal. I don't know what Adam saw. I think he's pretty convinced of what he's described, but I think it could be something different. So again, I'm open to that. I just don't know that it's entirely accurate when people are having those types of encounters where Bigfoot is actually coming out of a portal. Is that possible? Sure, I believe there are other dimensions. Could be possible. I just don't think it's highly probable. So I tend to err on the side of Occam's razor and it being something other than Bigfoot stepping out of it. I know that wasn't really an answer to the question, so I see people's face like, not really answering the question, because honestly, I don't know how to answer that question, to be fair. I don't know what it is, but I personally, again, I think Bigfoot is flesh and blood. I don't think it's coming in and out of portals, and I don't think there's an alien connection, so.
Over the years, my personal opinion has definitely changed from, it's paranormal to blood and flesh back to paranormal. Now, I think with this question, you've got to look into witness testimony, especially here in America with hunters claiming they've shot these beasts and seemingly done nothing to them. They've walked off, ran off with no damage done. But no normal unfleshed creature is tank bullets like that. You know, any creature is going to die and bleed out and leave if they're shot, especially in the head area or anything like that. But personally, I would definitely not. I don't know. I just don't know. I think we just need to carry on looking more into it.
Working. I personally have experiences.
1, 2, 1, 2.
I got this one. I personally have had experiences that I can't explain. Do I say that that's not because I think Bigfoot is or isn't paranormal or isn't real? I just have things happen that I can't explain, and those experiences I have heard from other witnesses, the same experiences. So I just have to put it in the library of my research and hopefully we get the answers one day. Nobody ever knows.
We could be dealing with either something that is interdimensional, it comes from one plane of existence to another, and theoretical physicists have postulated something like 15 different dimensions. What the mechanics are of it, why it happens is a different matter. Another idea is that a lot of these weird monsters are a global subconscious gestalt tulpa, or thought form. If you don't know what a thought form is, in Tibetan Buddhism and Tibetan animism, they believe that with the power of your mind, you can create something that is tangible, that other people can see or even touch, almost like an artificial ghost made from concentration. And there are a number of people like Dame Alexander David Neal that experimented with this. And when I was a student in Leeds, back in my student days, I carried out some experiments with thought form creation and intense meditation under certain rituals, and found that it works surprisingly well, but that's a whole different story. But if Tibetan monks can create something with their mind that other people can see, that can interact with our world, what could the collective unconscious of mankind itself create? So we are creating our prehistoric nightmares in some of these monsters. And I'll shamelessly plug my latest book, The Highest Strangeness, again, which deals with the mechanics of how this might happen. But to be honest, the things that interest me the most are the flesh and blood things. Being a zoologist, the things that interest me the most are the genuine, real cryptids, not the paranormal stuff. Apart from dragons, which I'm completely obsessed with.
So, I do have this idea about time slip or portals, maybe, because people report seeing thunderbirds and this type of thing was just, that could well be coming out, something like that. But the problem I have with portals is, unless you follow David Delaney's theory about granite and water sources, if the portal exists, how come it only comes out in a forest or on a mountainside and not in the middle of Birmingham city centre? So that would say that an 8-foot tall gorilla knows how to control, for want of a better term, the space-time continuum or something, and I don't quite go with it somehow.
So before I pass it back to our amazing MC and host, I would like to say thank you to everyone that is watching on our live, everyone that is watching on live, thank you so much for watching, we're here until 7. Oh, bloody hell. We're here till 7. So you have time to come down and see us, and have a great So I'll pass back to our amazing host. Thank you so much to all our panelists, Harlan Jones, Brian Kingsharp, Gwendolyn Purcell, Richard Freeman, and Chris Alsworth.
Well done, everyone. I wanted to just, when Chris done his question about if you saw footage of the big man, say, chewing on his foot, I only thought of one word: eBay. Kids need shoes, you know what I mean? I joke. Thank you, everyone. Oh, thanks to them as well. Look, they're well trained. Taking their chairs off. Right, we've got another spin. Now, before we do that, I think we need to liven ourselves up. I think a little bit of a Mexican wave. Start with the lovely young lady there. Are you ready to wave your arms? And yeah, you know how it works. Just wave it across and then back again. You ready?